guys, this is Rachel here, the Modern Shaman. Thank you for joining me for yet another YouTube Q&A video of the week. If this is your first time with me, I would love for you to subscribe, like, comment, let me know you're here. Also, you can visit my website, which is themodernshaman.net. There's a lot of resources for anyone that is kind of into what I'm discussing and would like to follow up further with me. If you'd like a one-on-one session, or if you'd like to look into any of the events that I do, as well as my teaching curriculum. I have my online masterclass available on my website for the sacred intuitive arts, as well as shamanic awareness. There is psychic development on there and spiritual entrepreneurship classes. So lots of resources if you are into what this channel is all about. All right, let's read the question for this week. It says, "Hey Rachel, your channel is truly a blessing. I wanted to contact you about your video, Releasing Childhood Trauma. How do we release the energetic gunk that gets stuck and stored in our body safely? I don't know where to go or how to facilitate the release of this. Please let me know. I look forward to your answer." Awesome. You know, this week, many of you know, last week here at the house, I had a ceremony that we performed, soul retrieval ceremony, body and soul retrieval is what we called it. And it was a beautiful time, but there was a lot of this releasing energy and stored up gunk, to use your term, that sometimes has been stored from childhood. Sometimes it's been stored for lifetimes. Ancestral trauma, species trauma. This is coming up a lot. I feel as I'm seeing kind of the collective with my clients, I get an interesting perspective when there's patterns in my clients and they just come and they're working through stuff and they're sharing it individually. But as a shamanic practitioner, when I'm seeing all of the clients for a month or so talk about similar issues or go through similar cathartic release, I see the collective patterns. And there is a collective purging and healing going on right now of these deep, deep wounds in the species. And I am seeing as humankind is ascending and moving through its evolutionary phase, that is a beautiful evolution and ascension of our spirit through this form and bringing more and more of our light into the human form and implementing that in our current world. We are having to purge a lot of our cataclysmic trauma from large cataclysmic events that really brought in a lot of fear into our DNA and the structure of the way that we have fight and flight response, trauma response. And a lot of the bodies that we are living in right now have a very reactive, automatic response. This is why we're seeing a huge rise in all of these autoimmune diseases coming up where there's basically no reason for them, but we have auto response. Anyways, there's a lot of purging that is happening. And this is the perfect time to answer this question because I've been initiating and facilitating a lot of it to individuals, but also in larger groups. And I feel like there's not a lot of tools out there in our current modern culture that really honor or value anger work, sacred anger work, grief work, mourning, frustration, because energy cannot be created or destroyed. It's there, it changes form, and the form may become more active, right? Even through the process of epigenetics, turning on and off our DNA sequencing. What becomes active in our DNA, this use of like active energy, and when it's triggered and we have a trauma response or a triggering in the body of past childhood trauma or past life trauma, or like I said, species trauma, gender trauma. There's all of these collective traumas that are coming up right now, that so many of us that are collective processors or that are working on the oversoul kind of layers of ourself are also trying to help process. And our culture doesn't have a lot of tools for us to do this besides like traditional psychotherapy or therapy or rage rooms where people go and just like break things. There's not a lot of healing practices that really honor that. So this is a relevant question. That was my long-winded way of saying, I'm glad you asked this question. Let's talk about some sacred anger healing practices that you can do that are just tools to have in your spiritual arsenal as an evolving soul that you can do anytime you need it. Because like I said, this energy, when it's triggered, it can't really be destroyed. So when we repress our frustration, our anger, our traumatic triggers, the energy gets bottled and kind of stored, like you said, energetic gunk, and it stays there. It cannot be destroyed. It stays there. And so unless we have a process for how to release it, then we don't get any therapeutic change and we stay in the same pattern. This is why we have cycles repeating themselves in our lives, because we never process through and finish that cycle. So it's time, Mama. Thanks for asking the question. Okay. I'm going to go through just the steps on sacred anger work that I would encourage you to do on your own. So the first thing I will say, and I say this a lot if you're in any of my classes, is that you need to line up with what you're doing. You need to mean it. You cannot do what I'm sharing in a trivial manner. Like, oh, I'm going to try it. I'm going to play at this. Because then your body, your soul, and your mind will line up with it in a trivial manner. Meaning it won't have much impact. It will just be play, okay? If you get serious about it and you mean what you are doing, the actions, the physical motions that you're doing, the mental thoughts that you're taking, the words that you're saying, anything that you're doing, if you align with that, body, mind, and soul, you put your sincere heart into it, your reverence, your sacredness, your holiness, if you make this ceremonially special, important, and sincere for you, that is where the power is held. That and only that. The ceremony, the work itself doesn't carry the energy. You carry the energy in yourself. So you have to bring it forth and 110% show up for what I'm sharing, okay? You have to bring that out and you have to do it with sincerity, as deeply as you can. And if I go through the steps and if you practice the steps and you did it and you're like, I kind of felt like I was just doing what she told me to do. It was in my head. It wasn't really in my heart yet. Then do it again. And if you still don't feel it, do it again and do it again until it gets to the place to where you can tell that you mean it. And you and only you will know when that lines up. Okay, you can't fake and lie to your own soul. It knows. It knows. It recognizes that falseness. But because of our culture and kind of what we're used to living in, where what people say is not always what they mean, and the faces that we put on and, you know, fake it till you make it, this kind of energy of like falseness, we're not used to truly getting in that sincere, vulnerable place. So I wanted to say that first as a caveat, that you have to be able to show up to do the work, okay? So set aside a time that feels like there's nobody else around, right? You're not going to be insecure about doing it. You're in a space outside. You need to be outdoors where other people are not going to come around that often. Maybe it's your backyard. Maybe it is a park or a school, an abandoned, I don't know, like playground, something. Maybe it's the ocean, someplace where you're outside and there's not a lot of other people. Okay, and you can feel secure and safe to do this work. Okay, you are going to need some palm-sized black stones. I'm using these right here in my example. And this is magnetic hematite. This is a little small. I would go bigger. The ones that I love, and I've given them all away so I don't have any more, are those palm-sized, kind of like a potato-sized black river rock. And I have some out there in my garden, but should have grabbed it beforehand. Hindsight is 2020. But anyways, that palm size, you know, the stones that they use for hot stone therapy massage, right? So you can really get a good grip on that stone. And the black stones have a natural absorbency to it. They soak in all colors of the light spectrum. And this is a beautiful use of easy, natural, mineral frequency absorbers. And just the literal utility that our mineral kingdom gives to us. Black is absorbent of all of the spectrometry, the light spectrum that we see and we don't see, and those frequencies that create all of what we see as color. And as those frequencies in our auric field are moving through our chakras or wherever they're blocked, they are naturally absorbed by black stone. Okay, so this can be hematite, which is magnetic, so it has that connection too with the bloodlines. Okay, if you're working through ancestral trauma, blood and the iron in our blood, there's a magnetic current that flows through the bloodlines, the veins. So hematite is particularly effective for that. But you can use onyx, you can use shungite, you can use just a black river stone. Whatever calls to you, grab those stones. Okay, have a few of them, depending on how much you're working through. And then when you go to this location, I would encourage you to create a liminal space, a line that says, when I cross over this space, I am now in a sacred ceremony. This is my point of no return. It is a threshold created. I like to use salt, but you can use sand. Salt has that kind of essence of protection as well in our ancient traditions, and we put a salt barrier around, and it's known as essentially creating that energetic psychic field for us of safety and comfort. And so you create that line in the sand, you step over into your sacred space, and now begin the sacred anger work. Now with the stones, you would take one inside of a palm, whichever palm you write with. So I'm going to use my right hand, and you squeeze it, and you begin to initiate or call up the energy of that traumatic event. So maybe it is childhood trauma. Maybe it is ancestral trauma, whatever it is. Maybe it's relationship trauma. Whatever you feel like you are blocked by in your life. And that frustration, maybe it's just general fear. Maybe it's insecurity. Maybe it is sadness, mourning, whatever it is. You initiate it and you start to pump the blood and the energy into the rock. So you're squeezing it as you're thinking. And you can voice out loud, so you can be vocal. Sometimes people are shouting people's names that traumatize them. Sometimes people are just kind of huffing and puffing or getting guttural with it. But you want a vocal release. So you're activating all through, kind of bringing up the gut. You're standing while you're doing this in a strong stance, feet shoulder width apart, and your hips over your toes and your shoulders over your hips, right? This is my stance of authority, and I'm pumping and I'm stating what it is, or just huffing that energy out like getting all that kind of coming up and coming out and squeezing the energy. Essentially, you are channeling that energy that was created in that trauma, but you're giving it a location to go other than being stored in the body when it's compacted for so long. So you've got to kind of rise it up, especially if it's been in there for a long time and you've been repressing that energy. So you're squeezing and you're vocalizing, or you're giving grunts, or you're stating and pumping all of that into the stone. When you feel like that is released, then you move into the heart chakra. So then you begin to pound like this. Just like a gorilla, would do this kind of thing. So we're activating the heart chakra. I have seen people do this until they're bruised here. It is a personal, evocative energy of bringing the body into this, especially if your body was violated. There is a physical energy that responds to the response of the energy being held in the stone and now calling up the energy of the heart to meet it. All right, so we're putting the balance of polarities there from the heart center, where our love, our wholeness, our health, our vitality in the mothering energy is able to counterbalance the anger, the frustration, and the darkness. This is the negative energy. Now, I don't mean negative in terms of judgment. I mean literally like an electron has a negative charge and a positive charge. So the negative charge here is stored, it's dense and dark, and we're activating this higher energy of the heart as well. You can, if you're doing this on a collective, so you may be doing this for a gender, for a human species. If you're doing this for a collective group, or maybe you're doing it for your nuclear family, you would go into the higher heart, which is in the thymus. So this is the collective. The higher heart is the one center. So the we are one. This is the higher level chakra center. So your heart or the higher heart here. Once this is done, then you take the stone and you throw it as far as you can with the gun, like the guttural, like you push all the way from the solar plexus and all the way through the rest of the belly up. So we are activating all of the stomach muscles all the way through and throwing as far as you can, releasing that energy out, letting it be absorbed back to Mother Earth. And she is the great recalibrator, recycler. So she will take that energy and recycle it and reuse it in a healthy and natural space. You can do it as many times as you need to do it. Maybe you have multiple events, multiple people. That is the sacred anger work. When you finish, you walk back over the threshold and close out the ceremony. So there's a sense of saying, thank you, I'm grateful, it is finished. You need closure to that as much as you opened it up. You need to step back on the other side and move into the secular space, okay, right? Which is our everyday waking space. There is the sacred, the liminal is that line into the beyond. You have made your ceremony, finished it. You walk back over the threshold saying thank you, it is done, it is finished, and that cycle is complete. So I hope that that is helpful to you. I believe that that tool, just having it in your tool belt, and you use it as often as you need, this is a very honorable way of recognizing the energy and giving it a location to go other than the body, to where it is housed and can be recycled and reused as needed. All right, I'm going to sign off here. Blessings. I'll be back next week with another video. Bye, you guys.